Hey everyone, this is Matt, and you're listening to the Dynasty Hotseat.
Yes. Hello, everybody, and welcome back once again to the Dynasty Hotseat. It's the only Dynasty show out there that is a certified Inferno, and today is one of the best days of the year because we got the Weatherman in town. We've got Matt. Find him over on X at Matt FF Dynasty. You know who he is. One of the best guests of the year. Always great to chat to you, Matt. How you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm doing really good. Thanks, Mags. Always a pleasure to come on and talk to you when we're doing these mock drafts. It's always a lot of fun, especially this early when we're so far out from the NFL draft. We know a lot's going to change, but it's good to get an early start and start finding out about these players.
I've controversially taken the way too early tag off this now. Ever since the college football final, I think I'm like, right, we're no longer way too early. We might be a little
just
bit
early.
Just early. Yeah, just like on time, maybe, yeah, but not way too early anymore. And hey, Sleeper have got those rookies up and ready now as well. So if you're one of the people asking for graphics, you got it coming right up this episode. Matt, before we dive into these players and everything you think, any general takeaways from this class? I see a lot of people kind of saying it's a bit of a meh class. It's kind of hard to disagree.
I think I am slowly coming around to it. I don't know if it's because now we're all starting to dig in a little bit deeper and you start finding these players and you dig deeper and deeper and you're getting a bit more excited about these guys that maybe you didn't know too much about at the start. But I think as an overall consensus, I think, the quarterback class is pretty weak overall, especially when you compare it to some of the recent classes we've had. Running back, absolutely stacked. Got an elite guy at the top and then plenty of solid depth as well, and some top-end talent alongside the number one guy. Wide receiver, you could argue a weak wide receiver class in terms of talent, but I do think it's still quite an interesting position. We've got a lot of different players, not just one set of maybe the undersized guys or the big guys. We've got a good blend of different type of wide receivers, which is always interesting to dig into. And then the tight end class, I actually think this is one of the better tight end classes that we've had for a long time. I know, obviously, I brought Bowers last year, unreal. We're not going to get anybody like him, but I do think we've got quite a few really interesting tight ends this year. A few guys at the top that are getting a lot of talk, and I think a couple that are maybe being slept on at the moment that could also maybe rise once we get further into the process and closer towards the draft. So overall, I'm actually quite excited by it, to be honest, Mags. I do think over time we are going to start warming up to it. So really looking forward to having a little chat to you about it.
Yeah, and no time like the present. Let's pull up this fresh new sleeper board. And Matt, we're diving in right at pick 1-1. Obviously, the ADP on sleeper, not up to date as good old. Hey, Ben Bryant. Shout out to Ben Bryant, who exits Broadway. I mean, wow, stage performer, right? Interesting. So we're probably not going with Ben Bryant, but who are you going with, Matt, as your number one pick in the draft?
Yeah, I think I'm going to kind of break it down a bit of how I'm maybe viewing the draft board, how I'm going to play it. And I think with the 101, I kind of want that guy that I feel the safest with, knowing probably the most can't miss prospect, I think, out of everyone, and that's Jeanty. I know we're doing SUPERFLEX, but I just think he's that one guy that I could really pin my flag to and say, yeah, he's got it in terms of being an NFL player, and I do think he's going to have a very successful and a very long career. I know obviously running backs don't get the longest of careers, but I do think he's going to be a stud for a long time. I don't have to really dig in too much to the hype because you've probably seen it everywhere you look. Everyone's talking about Jeanty, 2,600 rushing yards, 370 plus attempts, and still averaging 7 yards per carry, which is just insane. He's had 80 receptions in those 3 years, so we know he's got the pass catching ability. You look at the metrics over this past season: led in rushing yards, led in rushing touchdowns, led in yards after contact per attempt, led in missed forced tackles, led in breakaway runs. He's got everything. So I don't need to dig too much into that. But the one thing I will mention that I think maybe we could find a little bit interesting that maybe some people don't know about, a little bit about his backstory and when he was younger. You might know, because I know you dig into these prospects quite a lot, but being that we're on the other side of the pond, I find it's quite an interesting story. So Jeanty's dad was in the US Navy. He's a US Navy chief. And he actually spent a year over in Italy in his early time in high school. He came over to Italy, and he actually went to a school that is specifically just for people that serve in the army. So he had that 1 year over here in Italy, played American football, had over 1,200 rushing yards, 21 touchdowns in 6 games. So that's 200 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns per game, showing that American football, there's a reason why they say world champions, because if you take it anywhere out of America, they tend not to be quite as good as those guys. So, yeah, I just thought that was quite interesting for us on this side of the pond. There's a little bit of connection we can have with Jeanty. But obviously after that, after he dominated over in Italy, I think he said, Mum, Dad, I need to go back to America. Went over back to America, played high school in Texas, and now I'm doing a little bit of linking Texas, NFL teams, who's getting a lot of hype about getting running back, the Dallas Cowboys. I think it's a match made in heaven, and I do think there's a pretty good chance that we could get that link up. So yeah, really looking forward to seeing him come into the NFL. I think he's going to be a stud for fantasy.
I think Cowboys fans will riot if they don't take him. They've just been waiting, like, because it was meant to be Derrick Henry, right? And then it was meant to be one of the guys in the draft. It's been meant to be this guy forever, and it hasn't quite worked out. So you're right, it's timing. Just before we move on, and Jeanty, obviously you reeled off all of those unbelievable stats and all those things he's done. Why do you think people seem to be reluctant to put that generational tag on, whereas Bijan Robinson came out like generational, one of the best running backs we've ever seen? What is it about Jeanty that we don't see that kind of stamp put on him? He's kind of this freak and this bruiser, but no one's saying he's like a generational guy for some reason.
I don't know. Could it maybe be the fact that he plays for Boise State? I mean, we don't have a lot of elite guys in the NFL. I think DeMarcus Lawrence was somebody that played for Boise State. Talking about UK fans, Jay Ajayi, I remember when I was getting into like playing fantasy football, Jay Ajayi, obviously a UK guy. I think he played over at Boise State, didn't he, as well? But I think maybe that could just be the one thing. And people say, obviously, when they got into the playoffs and he kind of struggled, didn't he, against was it Penn State? Struggled against a solid defense, they were saying, so or a true defense. So I think that's maybe the one thing you could argue against. But I think on the flip side of that, when you talk about these teams that aren't overly strong, I mean, the guys he's playing, like the O-line that he's playing behind, I mean, they're not going to be super talented. There's not going to be a lot of superstars coming out of there. So I think it balances itself out, especially at running back, because obviously the things he's got to overcome at running back. So I just think, maybe people are just cautious about using it, because we do tend to kind of overuse the tag generational. Maybe now we're kind of refusing to use it because we use it a little bit too often. But I think he's got a great shot of having that tag put on him, because what he's done is just unbelievable, especially this year and last year as well. So I'm going to say generational talent.
Yes, absolutely love that. So we got Jeanty locked in, and thanks everyone listening for joining us on the ride. Hey, if you've not already, there's a lovely little subscribe button there as well that you can click to join in to not miss another draft. And hey, we got these graphics for you now as well. What can you do? Like what a great time to be alive. So we got Jeanty locked in. Who's following him up at pick 2 for you, Matt?
Yes, so I'm going to go over to the wide receivers, and for me, Tet McMillan, he is the wide receiver one for me out of Arizona. Just a huge guy, 6'4", 210 pounder. I know people don't like the term alpha, but I think you could call him an alpha. He dominates on the outside, that huge wingspan, that huge size that he's got, a real red zone threat. He's also got a bit of yard after catch ability as well. So I think he just possesses a lot of the talents that we look for. I think in recent times we're kind of scared away from these big guys because we do feel like they are pretty boom bust kind of players. But I feel like Tet McMillan has proven over the years that he can do it all. And I see a lot of people mention about the contested catches, that you can't get separation. But I know you've spoke about on your show plenty of times when you spoke about Tet McMillan, the fact that he's played with his high school quarterback throughout his career. I mean, when you're playing with a guy that you've got such a connection with, I mean, he's going to throw you the ball. It doesn't matter what situation you're in. I mean, if you've got that kind of connection, we see it in the NFL with people like Aaron Rodgers throwing it to Devontae Adams. It really doesn't matter. If you've got a guy and you've got that chemistry, you're going to throw him the ball. So I don't see that as a big red flag. And the fact that he is so good at those contested catches as well, I mean, that's just another positive for me. And then, as I say, the fact that he's produced year after year, averaging over 110 receiving yards in the last 2 seasons, I mean, yeah, he's special. And again, we do tend to gravitate towards the wide receivers when it comes to Dynasty. They're the assets that we feel like have got that insulated value. So, at this point, as I mentioned with Jeanty, I'm kind of looking for that can't miss prospect or someone that feels a lot safer. And again, I think Tet McMillan and taking him as a wide receiver one. And this is the move I'm looking to make at this early stage of the draft.
Yeah, and this is something where Matt, what we're going to see in the next few months is people trying to be contrary and trying to say this and trying to say that. You will see somebody say Ashton Jeanty isn't my running back one because blah 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 blah. Tet McMillan isn't my wide receiver one because I want retweets. These are the two, right? There's no debate about who's running back one and who's wide receiver one, right? Like, and Tet McMillan, I think you could put up a bigger fight against Jeanty being running back one than he could for McMillan being wide receiver one. I think he's just that prototypical size, that speed that he has. Like I can't wait to see what team he ends up on. It'd be cool for him to go somewhere where, like, if he went to the Chargers with him and like Lad McConkey, that'd be so cool, right? Where they have two guys. Yeah, I think he's had enough double coverage for a lifetime over Arizona. So hopefully he gets a nice landing spot where he can show what he's up to one-on-one. So I love that pick of Tet McMillan. Hey Matt, it's Superflex. We're at 103. When do you dip into the quarterback well? Is it now or do you push these guys?
Not quite yet. I've got one more player that I'm gonna pluck out before I go to the quarterback. And it's funny that you just mentioned about Tet McMillan, the standout wide receiver one. And I do agree, he is the wide receiver one for me. Andy is on a tier on his own, but I have got another wide receiver that I do like, and that's Luther Burden. I know a lot of people are starting to maybe sour on him a little bit after a disappointing year. But for me, I actually tweeted about it quite recently. I think he's probably closer to being the wide receiver one for me than he is the wide receiver three. I do like him that much, which could be a bit of a hot take because, as I say, I know a lot of people are souring on him a little bit. But if you watch the tape, and I'm going to hold my hands up and say I'm not a super film guy. And also, while we're on the subject, I will give a quick shout out to Phil, our good friend Phil at Push Plays FF. He recently put out a great thread about people that are starting to get into watching film and things to look for when watching film. So if you are somebody that wants to get into it or you're new to it, that's a great thing to look on and reference whenever you are watching film, just to dig into it. So yeah, just give a quick shout out to Phil, to Phil. But yeah, when watching his tape, he's probably got one of the most exciting for me when it comes to his tape. A real playmaker. These are the wide receivers that I fall in love with, Mags. These guys that when they get the ball in their hands, they become electric. And I think that's what Luther Burden does with his jackability. Incredible. I think he will get a lot of negativity because he has mainly played in the slot. But when you look back to his freshman year, he actually played 85% out wide and he had an okay freshman season. Obviously had the massive breakout as a sophomore when he did move into the slot. But I think that just shows that he has got the capability of playing out wide. I do think he's going to mainly be a slot wide receiver. But I don't think that's a negative, especially if you play in PPR leagues. This is a guy that could command a lot of targets. I think I recently mentioned when I said that tweet that I put out, somebody mentioned about seeing a bit of DJ Moore in his tape, and I can see that. Okay. I think a really interesting wide receiver, good route runner, and a playmaker when he's got the ball in his hands. So yeah, this is again another wide receiver that I think I'm pretty confident is going to have a good NFL's career, and for fantasy, I think he could be a stud, especially in these PPR leagues that are becoming more and more popular.
Yeah, it is worth remembering that Burden and Tet McMillan were, a lot of people's 1A, 1B before the season started. So it might be worth going back and having a little look at some of his tape from last year if you are going in to look at tape and obviously with this year as well. I mean, there's so much went wrong over at Mizzou. Like Brady Cook just didn't look himself. The O-line didn't look great. It didn't quite click for Burden or for any of those guys. And hey, Matt, you mentioned a hot take. Just give me warning next time, because I've got this fancy new hot take button. Look at that. Look at the background change to that fiery red.
We're getting hot.
next time you got one, let me know and I'll change that background for you.
Okay. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. We got Burden locked in. You said you might be going quarterback next, Matt. Is that still the case?
Yeah, I think it's time to dip into the quarterback. And as I said, I think with it being Superflex, I know a lot of people feel like you kind of have to take a quarterback, but you are able to play the players in the Superflex position. So I don't think it's an absolute need. If it was two quarterback, then yeah, I think quarterback's probably going to go pick one because it's such a need. But in Superflex, I feel like got a little bit more wiggle of not going quarterback. But now I do think it is time to dip into the quarterback. And it's Cam Ward for me. He is my quarterback one. I think he possesses the highest ceiling out of this quarterback class. He can make all the throws that you need. He's a real good playmaker. And he's also got, I wouldn't say he's got elite athleticism. He's not going to be a guy that's going to rack up a lot of points for you in fantasy with his athleticism, but he is able to extend plays with that athleticism, which is obviously a great thing in the NFL. Somebody that can maneuver in the pocket. He's got good awareness. He's able to get out of trouble, extend plays, and then obviously with that, he's able to make more plays. So overall, I think he's probably got the highest ceiling. I think he's someone that can develop as he enters the NFL and improve. So he's the one for me that stands out. I've seen people mention that there's a bit of a gunslinger concern. He kind of trusts himself a little bit too much, and he's more than happy to put it out there. But we kind of love that in fantasy, don't we? I mean, we think of Jameis Winston, somebody like that, somebody that's not afraid to throw the ball. We can take an interception if he's going to throw 5 touchdowns. I mean, we can take a bit of risk. So, I think Cam Ward really interesting. And as a Giants fan, I'm holding out hope that he can maybe just slip past. I think the Titans have mentioned they want a generational talent. Does that mean that they're maybe looking Travis Hunter? Is there a chance that Cam Ward can slip? I mean, Cam Ward with the Giants would be amazing for obviously Cam Ward, but having Malik Nabes as well.
Yeah.
And as a Giants fan, I'm more than happy to take that chance on. And while I'm not super high on the quarterback class, I'm happy to take the chance on Cam Ward and see what we can do with Cam Ward and Malik Nabes.
As the Giants fan, you're not slightly terrified that you're going to hear the New York Giants select Jalen Milroe at pick number 4? Like,
I can take it in round 2 if I can hear it in round 2. I'm a little bit more on board with that, but yeah, I mean, you never know with the Giants. We've seen it with the last quarterback we took. That was it's been a wild ride, that one. So yeah, we don't have the most success when it comes to quarterback selection, but hopefully Cam Ward can maybe slip to us, and we'll see what we've got.
Yeah, I really like Cam Ward. He was a hell of a lot of fun to watch last year. What really stood out to me was like just the creativity, like the way that he was able to escape certain things, like with these sort of arm angle throws, these little like, I mean, obviously, I watch a lot of Patrick Mahomes, a lot of these weird like playground throws that he like works in that are just really like nice to watch. So we can see him like endearing himself to a fan base really quite quickly. And that gunslinger approach, like you said, great for a fantasy. It might be a flame that doesn't, burn very long, but it's going to be bright when it is burning if he plays like that. So yeah, I love Cam Ward for your first pick.
Before we move on, Max, I will just quickly ask you a question on this because I've heard people talking about the quarterbacks. And obviously, I've taken one here at the 104, and some people are a little hesitant. Where would you compare him to last year's class? Because I'm seeing a lot of people talking about it, and I think I'm in agreement that maybe would Cam Ward probably be like the quarterback 5 last year, maybe. I think so. It's hard because you're taking him at the 104, and as a prospect, I mean, I'm not super high in the class, and when you start thinking it like that, is it a reach going at 104 for a quarterback? Is it just the SUPERFLEX thing that's dragging you into taking Cam Ward when you compare it to the players last year?
Well, yeah, if you think about it, quarterback 5 last year was what Bo Nix, and he was going in the second round.
Yeah, but then look what Bo Nix has done this year. I mean, this is the dilemma of making these selections. We think we know, but we don't know. And to be honest, even NFL gems don't really know, do they? When it comes to quarterback, it's the most impossible position to assess and be able to figure out how they're going to perform in the future. But yeah, I just thought it was interesting because there's a lot of talks about the strength of the QB class and comparing it to last year. And obviously guys like even Caleb Williams, who was like the can't miss prospect, and he struggled with the situation he landed in. So I just think it was an interesting point to talk about.
It has been interesting, and Cam Ward would fit into this category as well. Like you look at the rookies that have succeeded lately with your like Bo Nix, your Jaden Daniels, and with these other guys that have come in, it's been the guys that stayed in college a long time. And Cam Ward's been there since 2020. He was is it Incarnate Word? That's the name of the college he started at. So he is one of those guys that's played a lot of college football, whereas your Caleb Williams was a guy that was looking to get out as soon as possible into the league. Shedeur Sanders is going to be very, very similar. And these guys that kind of jump in, Anthony Richardson really springs to mind as someone who maybe come in a lot sooner than he should have. So Cam Ward does have that going for him. So it will be interesting to see if that kind of streak continues of these like quote unquote veteran rookies coming in and hitting the ground running. So yeah, I think it'll be good. It would be fun to see him on the Giants with Malik Nabers. I think you might end up with Shedeur Sanders, but yeah, I would love to see Cam Ward there. And we did mention Shedeur Sanders. Is that who's going next, or is he slipping down your board?
For me, he's slipping a little bit further. There's a few other players actually I'm going to take before we even get to Shedeur Sanders. And the next guy for me, Emeka Egbuka, the wide receiver out of Ohio State. I'm kind of, again, just mentioning what I'm looking at when looking at the draft board. I'm going for a wide receiver here because, as we mentioned, the running back class is so stacked and so deep that I feel like I need to kind of grab my wide receivers early because these three guys are probably the top three for me, and then is when I see a tier jump down. So I'm rather target this wide receiver now, and then I can look at the running backs, which is so strong and so deep coming up. So yeah, Emeka Egbuka, a guy that again is excelled at Ohio State, despite the fact that he has to put up with these superstars that have been the top guys at Ohio State, obviously Marvin Harrison Jr. Even this year, when you think, okay, he's got a chance, he's got a freshman coming in, but it happens to be Jeremiah Smith, who is just unreal. So again, he's kind of had to take a backseat once again, but the fact that he is still able to produce year on year is a testament to just how good he is as well. And I think he will kind of fit into that role in the NFL, being a wide receiver 2 rather than a standout wide receiver 1 for an NFL team. I think he's going to be a wide receiver 2. But there's no shame in that. We've got some awesome wide receiver 2s in the NFL, people like Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle. These are guys that have all been wide receiver 2s, but yet they've put up good fantasy numbers for us in the past. Kind of limited to a slot wide receiver, but again, I think he's played maybe a quarter outside and 75% in the slot, so shown that he can move outside if needed. Primarily going to be a slot wide receiver, but again, a lot of PPR, playing a lot of PPR leagues, so I've got no worries about going for a slot wide receiver because I feel like he's a guy that can command a lot of targets. That's given us points, and then obviously the yards that he's able to produce with the talent he's got. So yeah, at this point, happy to take my wide receiver 3 at the 105 spot.
Yeah, Egbuka is a guy that I think is finally starting to come back around. I think when I first started this, it was almost like I described it as prospect fatigue because Egbuka was meant to come out last year and didn't. So people are kind of forgetting just how good he is. And we've seen these slot guys come in and like hit the ground running and start putting up big fantasy points right away. Egbuka is someone that you can trust right away. I mean, it could be more that, like, I know we've seen some guys like Jackson Smith and Jigba take a bit longer to warm up, but then we've seen guys like Lad McConkey. Like, it's so important that with the landing spot, where is he going to end up? What's the rest of that receiving room? At least like Booker, like you mentioned, is used to finding ways to win in a stacked wide receiver room. I mean, the players he's played with is like an absolute who's who. One thing, did you watch the college final?
I saw highlights of it. Yeah, I didn't watch the full game, but
right. Do you think he's trying to look like CJ Stroud, or is it just me? Like, what's going on there?
I mean,
like, I don't know.
You said it
it's
that
like,
way. I mean,
it's like he's doing a CJ Stroud cosplay, right? If you go and look at like what he had the exact same haircut, the same headband, the same. I don't know what it was about Egbuka, but at one point I was like, "What is CJ Stroud doing on the bench?" It was about Egbuka. Like, go look it up, right? I'm honestly not crazy. Yeah, he's. There are worse guys to look like, I suppose, than CJ Stroud, right? Anyway, let's move on before we get in trouble, Matt. Will we? Let's go on to pick number 6. Who's following Egbuka?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, this is a really strong running back class. I think it's time that I start to pick a few running backs because there's so many that I'm excited to talk about. Caleb Johnson is my running back too, the running back out of Iowa. Had his breakout year this season, 240 rush attempts, 1,500. Just over 1,500 rushing yards and 21 touchdowns. And on top of that, 22 receptions, 188 yards and 2 touchdowns. So somebody, again, a real all-round running back, a guy that can do it all. 6 foot, 220 pounds. So he's big, strong, thick set, a real powerful runner. But he's not just limited to that north-south kind of run style. He's got a lot of agility to him as well. Ranked 9th in missed tackles forced and 3rd in breakaway runs, so runs of 15+ yards. So just showing that breakaway explosiveness that he's got despite being such a big body back. And I've seen a lot of comps on Twitter talking about like Najee Harris, getting Najee Harris vibes. And in a way, I do kind of see it, a big running back that has got that little bit of agility about him. But the one thing that we always knock Najee about in the NFL is the fact that he just runs into the back of his O-line. I mean, he just gets the ball head down and runs straight forward, usually into the back of his own O-line. Whereas I think Caleb Johnson's best trait is actually his vision. So it's one of the better traits he's got, and his patience. So while he might be similar in stature and maybe play style, I think he's just got that elite vision as well. So he's going to be. I'm really excited for Caleb Johnson, and he's somebody that, as I say, I've got him as my RB2. He's he's not. I'm not saying he's going to get to Ashton Jeanty kind of levels because I don't think he's going to get the draft capital. But if he can sneak into that late round one, if he can get at the back end or even early second round in this day and age, because we know that the NFL doesn't invest too much into running backs, but if he can get that kind of draft capital, I think he's going to be an absolute stud in the NFL. I know obviously a lot comes down to landing spots nowadays. A lot of teams are having that committee approach, having 2 running backs, but this is a guy that can do it all. And if he can fall into that right situation on a good team, yeah, I think he could be an absolute monster in fantasy football.
Yeah, he's so much fun to watch as well. Like just a guy that wasn't on my radar, from last year. It wasn't a name that was coming up, and then all of a sudden, putting out my sort of weekly tweets about it. It's like, this Caleb Johnson guy's good. It's like, oh, maybe he'll be one of my sleeper guys, and then it's like, oh,
that didn't last too long.
Yeah, he did slightly too well. And with the comps Najee Harris, do you sometimes think, and this is something I'm maybe noticing a little bit more and more, because the uniforms are similar, people compare.
Yes,
well, right, right, like that's they just
absolutely.
Yeah. We
yeah,
got
that
like
Iowa
a few years
uniform.
ago.
Yeah, Iowa and Steelers is I 100% get that. You see a big guy in the backfield with that uniform. Yeah, that is probably the first thing that comes to mind, and then you start putting the pieces together. Yeah.
Definitely. So gonna have to start a rule that I can't compare anyone like with that, or like the same haircut. Like whenever people were trying to say Jameer Gibbs like Alvin Kamara, it's like you've not watched Jameer Gibbs play at all, obviously. Like so, it's maybe try. Yeah, I'll stay away. All my comps have to have a different uniform and different haircut from now on. So let's do that. But Caleb Johnson, he's locked in. Who's going next to him at 1-7?
Yeah, so again, I'm gonna stick with a running back, Omarion Hampton, the running back out of North Carolina. I know you've been getting a lot of stick in the comments talking about Omarion Hampton. He's finally starting to come up. We've seen it in the last few drafts that you've done. He's finally starting to ascend into the first round. And for me, middle of.
And I'm like, it's not me. It's like I'm not picking the players. Well, stop coming after me, guys.
But you know me, Mags. If anyone that knows me for a while knows, I've got a little bit of affinity to North Carolina, especially when it comes to running backs. And while they might not be similar in stature,
shout out Michael Carter.
If there's a running back at North Carolina, you know that I've got a bit of interest in that. But yeah, Omarion Hampton, probably quite similar in ways to Johnson in terms of the physical standpoints, the size and the production that they've had. Again, he ranked 5th in missed tackles forced. But I think his missed tackles are a little bit different to Johnson's, whereas Johnson may be a little bit more agile. I feel like Omarion Hampton, he's the bruise. He's a guy that if he can't get around you, you know for sure he's going through you. An absolute brute in the running game. You could maybe argue a little bit more proven in the receiving game as well. He's had more receptions than what Johnson's had. But again, I feel like he's probably more that north-south runner rather than a guy that's gonna get out into space and produce. But I don't care how you get in the fantasy points as long as you're getting him. And again, I think he's a really talented running back that, like I mentioned, I think people are starting to come around to, and I've seen him rise up a lot of people's rankings. And for me, yeah, he's my RB3.
It's quite nice now where I think we're kind of swinging the other way now, where before everyone was kind of worried about, oh, what happens if this guy ends up in a committee? And now it's like, well, everyone's in a committee, apart from like 2 guys. So you're not really worried about it. And we've seen, like, for example, the Lions make it work so well with that, Sonic and Knuckles, that Thunder Lion, whatever you want to call it. Like Omarion Hampton is like the perfect, like, sort of thunder to someone else's lightning, right? So I'm not too worried where he ends up because I think he'll be used properly. And hey, if he hits one of those magical bell cow roles, even better. But if he's in a committee, I think he's got that unique skill set of pure brute power that he should be. He should be just fine no matter where he ends up. So I love Hampton going up there. It means the comment section would be quiet. Hey, why don't you say good job, Matt, for putting in? Let's not hear the negative comments. Let's be like, I want to see those clapping hands emojis in the comments being like, yes, we finally got Hampton up to 1-7. Surely you're probably just going to get people saying he should have been higher, Matt. You know how it goes.
Probably, yeah. Or they could complain about who I've got at the 108 and why he's fallen down to the 108. Shador Sanders. The quarterback is finally coming off the board. People will argue with it being Superflex, he should maybe be higher, but I'm not super in on Shador Sanders now. I will say super accurate, probably the most accurate out of the quarterbacks in this class. And again, he does have that athleticism, but he's not going to be someone that's going to get you fantasy points on the ground. And while he can use that athleticism to extend plays, he also takes a hell of a lot of sacks. And I do just worry that maybe he's trying a little bit too hard to be that superhero, make those plays every time, rather than just throwing it away. I know one game that I was watching the tape on, they played against BYU, and I think they got right down to the 7-yard line. He then took this huge sack, 25-yard loss with a sack, because he was just trying his best to escape from the tackles, and he was just running backwards, getting tapped, and it took 25 yards and they took him down. So a huge loss. And it's just plays like that that are really going to infuriate NFL head coaches. If you're in that range of maybe getting a field goal, you take a 25-yard loss, you've just absolutely killed any kind of drive. So I do just have the concerns with that. As I say, I think he's well-rounded. I think he's got a good arm. As I say, he's super accurate, but I just feel like he doesn't have that elite ceiling. And you could maybe argue he's probably the safer of the quarterbacks because, as I say, he's got a well-rounded game. So he could stick around in the NFL. I just don't see him having that ceiling in fantasy, especially where we're going to talk about a guy that's doing something like a Jaden Daniels and shooting up. Even someone we mentioned like Bo Nix, a lot of that is because he is pretty good on his feet and he can put the yards up where, as I say, I know Shedeur Sanders has got that athleticism, but he doesn't really use it. He'd rather use it to extend plays and make throws, which is great. But at the same time, if you're going to take these kind of sacks and losses, then you're going to struggle a little bit like Caleb Williams, really, into it, like what he did with the Bears. He's someone that always looks to improvise and make plays, but when you've got a bad O-line and it's not working out for you, you're just taking huge losses. So, a guy that I'm struggling to see the ceiling with him at the moment, but I can appreciate it. SUPERFLEX, he's a quarterback. There is a chance that he can maybe be a high-end quarterback too, which is solid for fantasy. But I think this is like a fair range of taking him, especially when you consider the rest of the class, like at the running back and wide receiver position that we've taken already.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of what we were saying about Bryce Young a few years ago when he came on. If you remember, Bryce Young was going around like the 103, and I just remember beating the drum saying, like, why you could take this guy here? Like, sure, he might end up being a really good NFL quarterback, but that doesn't always translate to fantasy points. Like, look at Patrick Mahomes this year, like barely a quarterback one, but doing just fine in the NFL, picking up all those wins, but wins don't get you points in fantasy football. So Shedeur Sanders is a guy that, it doesn't have that elite rushing upside. Although his comp for himself, do you remember this last year before the season kicked off? Someone asked him, what is your comp for a player in the NFL? And he said he's a mixture of Tom Brady and Michael Vick.
That's some confidence. See, that's the kind of guy he is, though. He's got that swagger. He's got that confidence. So, you can't hear. But I think you make a great point with the Bryce Young thing, because I think we did look at him and say he was kind of that safe quarterback out of that class. He was the one that might not have been elite at one certain thing with the rushes and the passing quarterbacks, but he just had a little bit of everything, so felt safe. And like you said, look how that played out. I mean, making a bit of a comeback at the end of this year, but it's not lit up just yet, as I say. I think similar way of thinking when it comes to Shedeur Sanders for me.
Yeah, absolutely. So Sanders is locked in at the 1-8. Who's following up at 1-9, Matt?
Yeah, so again, going back to this running back class and a former David Darling, Travion Henderson, the running back out of Ohio State. He's my RB4. As I said, he was a David Darling after that breakout he had as a freshman back in 2021. And I feel like now people are maybe sleeping on him due to the overall stats from this year. But I mean, are we just forgetting the fact that Judkins came over, who again was another freshman breakout who looked amazing, and again another David Darling. The fact that we have both of these guys on the same backfield, it was always going to be tough for someone to really stand out. But the fact that he had such a solid year alongside Judkins as well, I think it's testament to just how good he is as a running back. Super explosive, got that great base. So really, again, another really well-rounded running back that's got that big playability, but again, isn't afraid to lower the shoulder when needed. I do think the one knock is the durability concerns. He's missed time back in 2022 and 2023. So that's maybe the one knock you could hold against him. But I think overall, again, this is why I love this running back class, Mags. It's like another guy that's got a bit of everything, can do everything. We mentioned about a lot of teams are going to be committed backs. You're looking for these guys that can go into one role, but are able to do both if that situation arises. If he isn't a committee and a guy goes down, if you've got someone that can do both roles as a runner, as a pass catcher, then you're onto a potential fantasy stud if you get into that situation. So again, Trayvon Henderson, he fits that bill for me, and yeah, really excited to see what he can do. As I say, especially with that breakout as a freshman, he's someone I've been watching and waiting to come into the NFL. I know last year we kind of hoped he could come in last year, and I think he would have been. I mean, this is my running back 4. He would have been the RB1 last year without question for me if he came out.
Yeah,
he came out last year. So that's just showing the fact I can get him as my RB4 this year. He would have been the RB1 quite comfortably for me last year.
I really like what you're doing here because I've had a lot of guests on hype up the running back class and say how great it is, and then loads of them just end up in the second round, which is kind of like, I think they're like, oh, but there's so many, like you could wait the second round for taking them, but I like that you're just being like, no, this is the gem of the class, and kind of proving it as well by putting all these players into the first round with that 4 running backs off the board through 9 picks. So it kind of shows you this is where the meat really is in this class, right?
Yeah, absolutely. As I said, I think with the wide receivers not being as strong, like I said, I know they're exciting. I do think they're exciting, but if we're just talking about at this stage, especially obviously not knowing draft capital and landing spots, it's hard to predict. And when that all comes around and we see these landing spots and draft capitals for these players, things are going to switch up. There's no denying that. But now if we're just talking straight up talent, ability, and what they can produce for us in fantasy, why not take these running backs? I mean, I do feel like they're going to be studs, whether they fall into a committee or not. I think they're going to be studs. And I think the position is such a mess at the minute in Dynasty anyway. When you look at running backs, there's a lot of guys that you just think, God, I've got him really ranked at like RB20. And then it's just, there's not really that elite talent at the moment at running backs. So the fact we're getting such an elite class at this stage, it just feels like the perfect storm for me, and why I'm happy to take these running backs. It's something we've not done for quite a few years in fantasy football, but I feel like this is the perfect storm building. So yeah, I'm really excited for it.
Yeah, so I wonder if we'll keep that running back train going as we have pick 10, 11, and 12 left in the first round. Are you returning to running back at pick 10?
I'm going to give you one more, Mags. I think we can squeeze one more running back in. And do you know what? We're not even going to have to move teams. I'm staying at Ohio State. I've just mentioned him, Quinshon Judkins. He is going to fit in as my RB5. To be honest, neck and neck with Henderson. I mentioned that they played together at Ohio State. They both had really strong seasons. So why pull them apart now? I think they've got to be neck and neck, and it is hard to differentiate between the two. They might have different styles of play. Judkins is more of that thicker power running back, but does possess great contact balance and also some really strong bursts as well. He's not just a slugger. He's got some juice in those legs as well. So again, really, it's going to be really hard, I think, to separate these guys. And as we just mentioned, a lot is going to boil down to the landing spots and draft capitals. But again, another running back that can play all 3 downs if needed. Probably going to slot in as the early down back, that thunder that we've mentioned. He's going to probably fit it more into that role, but he's got the ability to catch some passes as well. Obviously 3 years of top production. He had those 2 years at Ole Miss where he absolutely dominated. We all had a little cry when he said he was transferred. He was going to Ohio State when we had obviously Trayvon Henderson over there. So the fact that they were going to go together, it did cause a few concern. People were questioning, one guy's going to pull away and the other guy's going to drop. But I feel like they've kind of risen together. They've both, well, maybe not risen, but they've both played well together and been able to produce together. I think that's testament to both of their talents rather than them holding themselves back. So yeah, really like Quinshon Judkins. I've got one more running back in there, Mag, so I'm happy with that. And as I say, I think pretty neck and neck with him and Henderson at this moment in time for me.
And yeah, if anyone has anything to say about Henderson going back and Judkins transferring, they can just show their big shiny championship ring to them, right? And that'll be that's kind of enough to shut anybody up. Do you see the size of some of the rings they were handing out?
I've not seen any of the rings. No, I've not seen the rings yet.
It was like a helmet size because they caught Jeremiah Smith. Jeremiah Smith is showing off this big like helmet ring, and he was like, "Oh, I've got to get like 2 or 3 more of these," and he was like, 2 more. He's like, "I'm not staying for an extra year." It's like, I'm like, like, I'm getting in the league as soon as possible. I'm like,
Absolutely.
This is
we're all for
that. 2027 already. So we got Judkins locked in. 2 more picks left of the first round. Matt, where are you going next?
I think it's time to dip into the one position we've not spoke about yet. I mentioned at the start that I really like this tight end class, so I'm going to throw out a tight end, and could be maybe a hot take. I feel like the consensus is leaning towards one tight end, but I'm still holding on to Colston Loveland as my tight. Yeah, there we go. Get the
There we go.
flames going. Colston
I got it.
Loveland. He's still my tight end one, despite a disappointing year. As I said, I feel like a lot of people are going to talk about Tyler Warren as being the tight end one because of the year that he's had compared to what Colston Loveland's had. But I mean, let's not forget that Loveland has just dealt with his head coach leaving and going to the NFL, his quarterback going to the NFL. It's been a lot of change in Michigan. So I don't think we can expect him to do what he did back in 2023, but he had that incredible year in 2023. He's the perfect tight end. I feel like he's really well-rounded. He's a great receiver. He's a good blocker. I know you don't get fantasy points for being a blocker, but if you can stay on the field, you've got more chance of getting fantasy points, is the way I see it. Great size, 6'5", 245 pounds. I just think, as I say, that comparing the two between him and Warren, I feel like he's the most complete tight end, giving me that little bit more confidence that I feel like landing spot's not going to be as important for Loveland. But mentioning landing spot, I've just mentioned the team he played for, that his head coach left to the NFL. Can we please get Colston Loveland over to the Chargers, reunite with Jim Harbaugh? They need a tight end. They need a receiver. That would be the ideal dream landing spot for me. Like I said, it's not critical, I don't think, for Loveland to land in a perfect situation, but that would be top of my wish list if we could get it.
Yeah, that would be absolutely amazing to get him in there. And while like Warren's more of like a throwback almost, I think. He does weird stuff as well. He's like just he's almost like Taysom Hill in a way. He's like this crazy athlete. Like you don't really know what he's going to do. Whereas Loveland seems to be in that sort of more modern tight end mold, like some of these like Travis Kelce like clones, almost like you're like Sam Laporta type players. He's a pass catcher first for sure. So I think Loveland's definitely got a chance to come in and make an impact right away. And it's great because I really like Loveland as well. I've got him as my tight end one as well, Matt. You're not alone. And the best thing about him is at the minute you don't have to take him here, which is great. You can kind of sneak him in the second round. So I'm loving Loveland's value for now. So he's locked in. Who is the final pick of the first round for you though?
Yeah, so my final pick in the first round, Trey Harris, the wide receiver out of Ole Miss. Yep. Again, another wide receiver that's big-bodied, 6'3", 210 pounds. If you watch his highlights, it is just an absolute joy to watch in terms of big plays. These one-handed grabs from doing the old El Beckham behind the back. He's doing all of that. He's got some incredible hands. He's a huge guy. Dominates on the outside. And I mean, what a year he could have had this past season. If it wasn't for that injury, he was on for an unbelievable year. He had 1,000 yards, despite the fact he only played in 8 games. And you look at the yards per route run, he had 5.15, which I'll tell you now is absolutely insane. The top guys usually get around like 3.5 if they really got like, I think Malik Neighbors in his final year was around that 3.5. So the fact he's getting like 5.1 is just crazy. And he played those 8 games and was doing that. So that just shows the big play.
That broke some kind of record. I seen a tweet.
It must have.
Yeah.
It's just unbelievable. And as I said, if he could have played the full year, he was on for a real special year. But as I say, that yards per out run just shows the big playability that he's got. When he's on the field, he's making a big play, whether it's jumping over somebody, running past somebody. He's someone I'm really excited about. The one knock, he's a bit of an aging wide receiver coming into this. I think he's going to be 23 or he might be 23 already. So that's a knock. But I mean, is it really a knock when you're a wide receiver? You could probably play until you're into your 30s anyway. So it's not a huge red flag for me. And as I say, he's a joy to watch when it comes to the grabs that he can make. A throwback wide receiver, one of those dominant guys that's going to jump over the cornerbacks and make those grabs and make some insane grabs. So yeah, he's going to fit in right at the end of the first round for me.
Yeah, slots in there perfectly for me as well. He's got tremendous upside. Do you think some people are scared of like these kind of wide receivers? People get scared of this type of wide receiver though, right? I mean, Troy Franklin obviously last year really, really scared people with that kind of downhill and then where he ended up going. We've seen people slide before, even whenever DK Metcalf was coming out of the same place. People were a bit like, oh, I'm not sure. AJ Brown as well, a little bit. What is it about this type of receiver you think people are so afraid of at the NFL level?
I think it's like you said, those kind of players, but you just worry that can they not get that separation? Are they relying too much on the size rather than the actual ability? But I think, as you mentioned, guys like DK Metcalf, there's more to him than just. I mean, everyone penciled him in as a guy that's just going to basically run downfield, and he's just going to beat you with his size. And I just think it's so narrow-minded. And I do think these guys, there's a lot to the game. And I think the old miss tag as well is going to go against Trey Harris. Obviously, guys like Jonathan Mingo, who came out and he really disappointed. It's just another one of those tags that it's going to put on these players. But yeah, I do think I'm really excited for Trey Harris. Actually, he's probably the last wide receiver that I'm super excited and think he can be a real difference maker in fantasy football.
Yeah, he's definitely a really, really interesting prospect. And that wraps up round number 1, Matt. We are going to go through round number 2. Just a quick reminder, if you're not already hitting that subscribe button as well as we fire into round number 2. Hopefully you can stay here with us for that. Matt, why don't you give me your 2-1, 2-2, and 2-3, and then we'll zone in on one player in particular to focus on, maybe someone that we haven't spoken about on the show before.
Sounds good, yeah. So at 2-1, we've just mentioned him, Tyler Warren, the tight end out of Penn State. Then next up, controversial pick maybe, Jalen Milroe. I'm putting in the quarterback out of Alabama. And then we're going to go again to, as I mentioned, the tight end position. I do like it this year, Harold Fanning Jr. out of Bowling Green.
So Harold Fanning Jr., super interesting prospect. He was someone that we mentioned. Shout out Phil again, second mention of the show.
Absolutely.
He had mentioned Harold Fanning to me as like a sleeper tight end. I was like, Phil, I'll be honest with you, I had him listed as a wide receiver. That kind of tells you everything you need to know about Harold Fanning Jr., right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely someone that was under the radar. Somebody I didn't really know about until I think it might have been when Phil was on. I might have been paying attention to the stats, but didn't really know too much about him. Incredible year, played over at Bowling Green. That's going to be, I think, the not yet again is who his opposition that he played against. I mean, that's going to be the big question mark. But I mean, you can only beat who you're playing against, I guess. And they did actually play Penn State in week 2. And guess what he had there? 11 grabs, 137 yards and a touchdown. So, I mean, he's done it against a real quality defense. And then you look at his bowl game as well when they played Arkansas State, 22 targets, 17 catches, 213 yards and a touchdown. So he is basically that offense. As we've said, it's not the strongest of teams. So it makes sense if you have got that bit of a gem in your team, he's going to be the focal point. But if you can be the focal point and still put up those kind of numbers against those teams, as I said, like a Penn State who knows that you're that guy, then I think that just shows how good he is. Also, a little interesting fact, Ohio native, Cincinnati looking at tight end.
Yeah, that could work.
Interesting. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm excited by him. As I said, really intriguing. Maybe slightly undersized in terms of what you look for a typical tight end, but in terms of receiving ability and the athleticism that he's got, again, really exciting for fantasy football. We're craving getting some of these tight ends that can really produce in the receiving game. So I feel like Fanning really does fit into that mold.
Do you know what I've just put together? And then this might not be one for everyone listening, but I got to say it anyway. Our good friend Ali, the Dynasty Grill, Bowling Green has to be his college team, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I haven't put those two together until now, but yeah, big fan of the Lawn Bowls is Ali. So yeah, he's got to be a Bowling Green fan. if he's not set a team yet, that has to be locked in. Shout out Ali if you're listening. So Matt, we got the next 3 is 2-4, 2-5, and 2-6. Who's coming off your board?
Yeah, this one's a pick I'm not super happy about, but it kind of fits the SUPERFLEX. Looking at quarterbacks, you mentioned is a guy that's starting to get a little bit of momentum. Jackson Dart, I think, is okay to slip in at this point and taking a gamble on the upside. Got him at 204, 205. This is probably my guy in the entire class. RJ Harvey, the running back out.
Yes,
absolutely my guy this year. And then 206, Devin Neal, the running back for Kansas.
Right, you're gonna have to fight me for my guy status in RJ Harvey, right? Because I've been banging the RJ Harvey drum for a while as well, Matt. We can't not talk about RJ Harvey, right? Tell me about why you like him.
Absolutely. As you mentioned, I've seen him in your threads a couple of times that you've done throughout the year. So a guy that I've had my eye on for quite a while, thanks to you. And as I've dug in, I can fully see why he's your guy. And I'm going to take him as my guy as well. So really interesting the fact he actually played quarterback in high school, despite the fact that he's 5'9", 200 pounds. So giving Kyler Murray a run for his money in terms of the stature. So found it interesting that he played quarterback. But yeah, really turbulent start to his college career. I think he redshirted, didn't he, at Virginia, and then transferred over to UCF. Had that ACL injury in his first year there, so real tough start to his college career. But then, as soon as he got healthy, as soon as he got on the field, he has been incredibly productive in the last 2 years over at UCF, averaging 1,400 rushing yards, around 20 touchdowns per season. The fact that he's done it 2 years now is just cemented the fact that he's not just this 1 year wonder. You do get these guys that flash up as a 1 year wonder, but the fact he's done it now back-to-back years is why it's solidified the fact I think he is going to be really special in the NFL. Got great burst, got great agility. Watching him, it does remind me a lot of like Bucky Irving when he was coming in last year as a prospect. That guy that super elusive, got a lot of wiggle, he can make guys miss. Really exciting to watch when you're watching his tape. I'm getting those Bucky Irving vibes. Obviously, that's worked out this year. It doesn't always play out. More than happy to concede that, but just from at this point, we obviously don't know the landing spot on the draft capital, but just watching him and the talent that he's got, he's definitely up there as my guy and somebody that I'm going to be banging the drum with yourself, Mags, until we get up to the NFL. I think he's going to the Senior Bowl, right? So another opportunity there. I think when he gets there and people start to see those reels on Twitter, those highlights, people are gonna be joining us, I feel like, on the hype train.
Yeah, hopefully not too much. Not too much.
Yeah,
I want to get plenty.
Just a couple of good plays.
It's always so interesting, right? When you have your guy and you want to shout at the hilltops, like, by the way, this is my guy. So whenever they make it good, you're like, well, I said it was my guy, but you said too much, then it's like, damn, I can't get enough of it. So it is. There's a fine art in there. So RJ Harvey, love seeing him mentioned. Who's coming up next at 2'7", 2'8", and 2'9" for you, Matt?
So 2'7", another running back, Dylan Sampson, the running back for Tennessee. 208, my wide receiver 5, Jalen Royals, wide receiver for Utah State. 209, Elic Iomana, wide receiver for Stanford.
Jalen Royals. And I don't think Jalen Royals has had a shout out yet on the show. So why don't we give him a little. Oh, I cannot spell Iomana. You talk about him, I'll find out. Okay, there we go. I got him.
So Jalen Royals, again, really, as I mentioned, with the wide receivers, this is now when it's getting to the point. I've mentioned that the 4 guys that I've got there, they're kind of clear for me. There's a bit of a jump down when it comes to these. And anyone from wide receiver 5 down to like wide receiver 10, 11, you're going to see these guys scattered all over the place because I feel people are going to pick the poison and go with them. But Jalen Royals, for me, is a guy that I've really fallen in love with. Came out of high school actually unranked. So I didn't even have a ranking. Came as a 3-sport athlete, football, basketball, and athletics. Got a really solid frame to him, 6 foot, 205 pounds. So not the biggest, not the smallest, just a real good blend. But then when you watch his tape, super elusive, got that great yak ability. I've got a soft spot, Mags, for these wide receivers that have got that yak ability. Stems back to Puka Nacua. I'm gonna throw in a Puka Nacua comment, even though we're 2 years removed. He was my guy back then. Yes, I'm going to keep banging that. I'm going to keep.
You deserve it. You deserve it.
Thank you. Yeah. Maybe not the same kind of player as Puka Nacua, but as I mentioned, just someone that's got that yak ability. I do have a soft spot for these guys. Had 1,000 yards last year in 2023. Last year, he was on pace for an even better year than that. Obviously, suffered the foot injury in October, which kind of derailed it. Stopped him getting that better season, but still the fact that he was showing improvements coming into this past season just shows that he's an improving wide receiver. As I said, I think he's going to be really interesting when he comes into the NFL. A lot, probably at this stage, it's going to rely on landing spot, getting into that good situation, as with a lot of these players, I think, as we're starting dropping down the rankings. But somebody I'm really interested in, and as I say, I do have a soft spot for these type of wide receivers.
Love it. Yeah, I'm definitely going to be keeping my eye a little bit more on Royals now as well, because as you said, you called it with Puka, and that's not nothing.
So. I mean, I'm not quite there yet. I'm not going to say he's my Puka of this year's class, but definitely somebody that I'm interested in.
Yeah, it definitely means everyone watching should be interested as well. And Matt, you got 3 more names to round off the second round. Who are they going to be?
Yeah, so there's probably a stud here that you've not seen me mention yet, and it is because, as you keep saying, that word anomaly fits him absolutely perfect. Travis Hunter, at this moment in time, with everything we know, that's who I've got at the 210. And I don't think he's on sleep because nobody knows.
I'm gonna give some love to Jarquez Hunter.
Jarquez Hunter, yeah, that's fine. You can go in there, but yeah, nobody knows, do they, yet what he's doing. So I've got him at the minute at 210. 211, Brashard Smith, running back out of SMU. And then to round it off, I'm sticking with this guy. I feel like there's still a chance. Ollie Gordon, I'm not giving up on you just yet. He's going to fit in right at the back end of round 2.
What the hell happened?
Let's talk RB10. RB10, Mags. Wow. He's my RB10.
Let's talk about Ollie Gordon. What the hell happened? Because it looks like he went on holiday and then he came back for maybe like the last 2 weeks of the season where he like decided, oh yeah, I'm like really good and a great athlete and like hurdled over everything in sight for whatever reason. What happened there?
Do you think he was just that good in his sophomore season? He thought, everybody knows what I'm about. I mean, no, I do think, I think the big issue that I saw is that the offense, it really struggled last year. So when you're falling behind early, running backs is probably the hardest position to stand out when your team's falling behind that early in the game. It's hard to lean on your running backs. So you look at the amount of carries he had, like 100 less carries than what I had last year. Yards per carry did drop from 6.1 to 4.6. So definitely struggled in terms of his efficiency. But as I said, I think the one thing for me that I'm pinning it to is the offense struggled. So I feel like in turn, it's hard for Ollie Gordon. But you can't just forget what he did in his sophomore season when he had nearly 18,000 rushing yards, 21 touchdowns, just an incredible year. And as well, this is yet again, Mags, another running back that really well-rounded, can do it all. He's had 80 receptions in his college career. So a guy that he knows how to catch football. So again, somebody that might fit in as an early down back, but he can slot into any kind of role if needed, if the situation arises. The one worry that I do have, and it is kind of because he's had this down year, please tell me it's not going to be Isaiah Spiller 2.0. Obviously, another guy that was a David Doyle and everybody loved, and then he struggled before he got into the NFL. And then as soon as he entered the NFL, I was still hoping he could bounce back to what we saw the year before he came into the NFL, but he just never played out, did it? So that is my one fear. Is he going to be another Isaiah Spiller 2.0? I hope not. I think what we saw in his sophomore year, I'm clinging on to that, Max. But at this point, I mean, taking him at the end of the second, it's not a huge value paying, is it? So I think it's worth the shot here.
Yeah, we have seen that happen with Spiller, and I'm blanking on the guy's name, but I am sure. Sorry to bring it up. I am sure you like this guy as well.
No, probably.
Who was the guy that Judkins took the job from? Zach Evans.
Oh,
that's it, right? He was another guy, right, that came out hot.
Absolutely,
and then it just didn't quite work out, right?
Yeah, I think he had a tough last season, didn't he, in college football, and I was just clinging. I'm a sucker for it, Mags. I cling on to the hope. It's the hope that kills you. But yeah, thanks. Yeah, we mentioned Puka. You've got to mention the misses as well. That's only fair. I'm fine with that, Mags.
But I think it's okay to take a shot at these guys. Like back end of the second, in the third round, you think, you know what? At least these guys have shown me something at some stage.
Yeah.
I may as well swing the bat on them. If you're like talking about taking Ollie Gordon up in the first round because he did something, multiple years ago, not really worth it. But here, why the hell not? Like you're almost bordering in a third round pick, which is a throwaway pick in most trades. So I don't hate taking these guys at all. And Matt, we have to talk about then. There's obviously 2 rounds, absolutely smashed it. But you've got more, obviously. We can't go through all of them. Is there any favorite sleeper players that you have? Obviously, mine was always RJ Harvey. We've mentioned him. I do have one more for you, which I'll pitch to you after any more guys that you've got.
Yeah, I'll show you mine. You show me yours, definitely. So, you know me, Maxie. I love digging into the guys that nobody's really talking about. So when it comes to sleepers, you know, I was all over this one. So I've actually got one for every position, not quarterback, because as I mentioned, the quarterback position stinks. But I'll give you one from each position. So running back, Bashal Tutin, running back for Virginia Tech. Really exciting running back. Absolutely electric. I know we didn't really get to talk about Sampson. He's the guy that everyone's touting as this electric track athlete, unbelievable speed. I feel like this is the guy that if it comes to the 40 time and they're both running it, he's going to be right neck and neck with him. So yeah, he's a guy that I'm really interested in. Kick return specialist as well. So somebody that can definitely get on the field early. Oh, he will 100%
maybe
some.
He had one of the biggest monster games of the season, if I remember. It was bordering on 300 scrimmage yards, from running back, which is and 4 touchdowns. Look, I can't remember off the top of my head, but if you look at the stats, there's one game in particular that'll stand out. You're right; he's absolutely electric. So I love that.
He's electric. So yeah, that's my running back sleeper. Wide receiver, Savion Williams, the wide receiver from TCU. He's a guy I think that's going to get a lot of. I believe he's going to the Senior Bowl, so he's someone that could get a lot of hype. He's an absolute freak in terms of the fact he's 6'4", 6'5", 225 pound, an absolute freak athlete for his size. Unbelievable. Played quarterback. He's got an unreal arm. He's probably got the best arm out of all the quarterbacks at TCU, but he plays wide receiver. But as I mentioned, played quarterback in high school. Then transitioned to receiver, but also runs with the ball as well. This past season, he had 60 receptions, 661 receiving yards and 6 touchdowns, 51 carries, 322 yards and 6 touchdowns. So again, I mentioned Puka Nacua. He's kind of fitting in that someone that does a bit of everything. I love those guys. They get a bad tag, don't these gadget guys? But when you're 6'4", 225 pounds, and you're able to be that agile, that much of a freak athlete, he's someone as well that I'm really excited to see what he does. I think he's going to get a lot of hype if he is. I believe he's at the Senior Bowl, so I think he's going to get some of those clips that we're going to get excited by. And then finally, I said I'd give you one from each position. So tight end, Aronde Gadsden, tight end for Syracuse, I believe. He's a Shrine Bowl invite, so not Senior Bowl. He's at the Shrine Bowl. But again, a really interesting tight end. I think he played wide receiver in high school. Moved to tight end in his freshman year, and then broke out in 2022. Had just under 1,000 receiving yards. Sadly, had a season-ending injury in 2023, but then yet again this past season, 2024, just under 1,000 receiving yards again. For me, I'm going to call him the Harold Fanning light version. So the guy that you're going to get a discount, but he kind of fits a similar mold to being slightly undersized, but a really good receiving tight end. He's again, I mentioned about at the start of the tight end class. I'm really excited by it. He's a guy as well that fits in there that I think could rise up my board for sure if he shows out and gets that good draft capital.
Yeah, I heard his name a lot last year. Syracuse were a hell of a lot of fun. Cal McCord having a complete resurgence last year was great. Yep. Great to watch them. So yeah, he was popping up quite a lot, and it's always good to get a sleeper tight end for sure. And I've got one for you who I think I've literally only realized has declared for the draft. I didn't think he was going to, but I could see his name on the list, and I've searched it, and he appears to have Khalil Mullins, the running back out of Michigan, is a rhinoceros. Is one of the biggest men I've ever seen play running back, and he's only been playing that position just over a year, I believe. Yeah. If he can put everything together, this is someone I'm taking in the 3rd round, 4th round if I can get him. It seems like, but I'm just slightly afraid he's going to go to the combine, and then
he bullied out Donovan Edwards, didn't he? At the running back position. I mean, a lot of people were excited by him coming into this year. So if you can dethrone him, you've got to be a good running back. And like you said, if he's new to the position as well, excited.
Donovan Edwards was like the cover star for the the college football game. He was meant to be this huge star, and Khalil Mullins took his lunch money. So it's
and Quinn Ewers. He was on there.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just going to be the new thing, not the Manning curse like the college.
No, I feel like I think Travis Hunter was the other guy, so he's done all right.
It's like 20 guys on there, right? So it's like they're all screwed. All right, Matt, that has been an absolute pleasure as always. Thank you so much for coming back onto the show, Matt. Before we let you go, can you let everybody where can they find all your great work? What things you up to? You just got a new role, I believe, right?
I did, yeah. So you can find me on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, Matt FF Dynasty. A lot of my content has been over there just on Twitter. I found it easier to balance my personal life while just putting things out on Twitter. But now things have calmed down. I'm happy to announce that I've gone over to join the guys at DLF. So I'm going to be trying to get some more written stuff, finally getting it back out there, finally starting to get those writing boots on again. So yeah, that's been a lot of fun, and hopefully in the near future you'll see some more work over there. But once again, thanks Max for having me on. Always love chatting to you, chatting to these incoming rookies. As I say, we're still a way away from the NFL draft, but it's never too early to dig into these guys. So thanks again for having me on, mate.
Oh, absolutely my pleasure. Can't wait to have you on again sometime soon. And thank you everybody at home for listening to, and remember, for anything Dynasty you need to know, keep it locked on the Certified Inferno. We'll see you next time.